Hello, I'm Jared Discord, and I want to answer a question. Who is the strongest final boss in the Yu-Gi-Oh series? Before we begin, we must lay out exactly what a final boss is in the context of Yu-Gi-Oh! The final boss is the last major threat that an opponent faces that is not part of the main cast, with one exception. These are characterized by owning an incredibly powerful boss monster, incredibly strong cards, and often push the main character to the brink of defeat. Unlike a lot of other shonen anime and manga, the Yu-Gi-Oh series does not have a clear divide in power. With this in mind, I have made what I believe to be the definitive way to test a character's deck and effectiveness in the series' game of choice, by ranking them based on their effectiveness in the TCG/OCG. How will I do that? Well, let's get into the rules and criteria so we can figure out who is the strongest Yu-Gi-Oh final boss. One deck per character. I'm generally going to play cards they played at their strongest, but all cards they used are fair game. This also excludes support their archetype may have gotten in later sets. This is based on cards they used. No one-of rule. For those unaware, this is when a character's main card is usually a one-of, not due to actual logic, mostly due to plot. And I know this is a point of contention, but we are excluding ban cards, as it would not be very fair for a character in the original series to have cards that others cannot use because they were banned at the time. With all this in mind, I will be constructing a 40 card deck to make them as competitive as possible while remaining true to the character. While I usually have a 75% card rule where a character must have at least 10 unique and limited cards to make the deck, I will be decreasing the cap for this special. So, the final bosses only need to have 50% of their deck to qualify. To balance this though, most of the cards they will receive are cards they likely had, in the case of Zart, or cards that literally have the character's name, in the case of Vector Fusel Dawn 1000. Again, to keep with the credibility of this series, this will be the exception rather than the rule. But I know you guys want to see an all-out battle between Yu-Gi-Oh's most powerful final bosses, and I know I do. So let's continue on. After making their decks, I will duel them against every other participant in best 2 out of 3 duels. Every victory in a match awards a participant a point. Whoever has the most points wins the competition. In the event of a tie, I will look at the quality of victories. For example, a victory against Rex Raptor would not be worth as much as a victory against Yami-Yugi. And finally, power scaling is based on the TCG. While their cards are fine and good, I want to see if they actually existed with no outside interference or special magical powers, who would be the strongest final boss. So let's get started, because I am so fucking Yami Bakura plays an occult deck, based around limiting the opponent's plays and controlling the field. The avatar of Zork Necrophades and the first returning competitor in power scaling Yu-Gi-Oh!, Yami Bakura's game plan is a systematic limiting and removing of the opponent's board before going in for game. To accomplish this, Yami Bakura runs the incredibly powerful Jalgan the Spiritualist, a card which can shut down much of the competition if used correctly. He also runs the Dark Door, which limits the attack to once per turn, and when used with Dark Sanctuary can create a powerful lock that can either stop the battle phase entirely, or give Bakura time to mount a powerful defense and win through attrition, alongside Chain Energy. While this may sound powerful, spell and trap card removal is Bakura's biggest weakness. Successfully destroying his continuous spells will spell death for Bakura. Along with this, many of his cards that he has used has not been printed yet. Due to this, for the most part, Bakura's options are kind of limited. Despite his old strategy, Bakura has many strong tools at his disposal, and we'll see how he does this time. Night Shroud plays a dragon deck focused on, oh boy. Night Shroud, or the Origin of All Darkness, has definitely the shortest stick of the competitors here, having only 2 monsters from his actual deck in the card game in any capacity. To remedy this, I gave him all the cards available when he possessed Atticus Rose and Yusuke Fujiwara, which gave him a Red Eyes focused dragon strategy. While his deck is woefully inconsistent, Clear World serves as an enormous boon for his deck. The effects of this card affect the players in different ways, but the most relevant effect is that dark monsters cannot attack when there is more than 1 monster on that player's field. This can stall the game for many turns since the majority of the final bosses use dark monsters. To further this, Night Shroud can use multiple Inferno Fire Blast cards to blow out the opponent's life points while stalling or using Clear Vice Dragon and Red Eyes Darkness Dragon as alternative win conditions. While the strategy can be effective, his lack of synergy really hurts his deck, as he really has to scrape by in the early game or hopefully stall out with Clear World to even have a chance, and if Clear World is destroyed, Night Shroud usually falls with it. While Night Shroud may have a lot of things against him in this competition, do not underestimate him, because he just needs that chance to turn the tables and show you what nothingness truly means. Zone plays a Time Lord deck based around completely annihilating the opponent's field and resources. Zone in his deck can be summarized by one word: efficient. A time traveler who seeks to destroy New Domino City, Zone realizes that he does not need insanely hard to summon boss monsters or multiple synchro plays to create a field of monsters. No, Zone summoned 1 monster and shows the opponent exactly why that doesn't matter. Time Lords are very simple. Zone summons a monster, attacks, and either returns cards to the hand or deck, have the opponent's life points, or any combination of the above three. If Zone gets one successful attack off, the opponent is going to be in bad shape by the end of the turn. If one attack is not bad enough, Zone also has access to Empty Machine, Infinite Machine, and Infinite Light, which can allow him to filter through his deck, summon a Time Lord in addition to his regular normal summon, and summon 3 Time Lords respectively. If Zone gets these cards going, the opponent will be facing an enormous uphill battle. While this may seem overwhelming, Time Lords are essentially just very powerful walls, and if a competitor has an answer to the Time Lord or the attack needed to use their effect, then Zone will be powerless to stop them, and he will be a sitting duck as the opponent mounts an offensive against his vulnerable life points. Zone has access to one of the most powerful archetypes we have seen so far, and every competitor will be facing the fight of their life against this false savior from the future. Don Thousand plays a Numeron deck based around OTKing the opponent. The Dark to the Light of Astral, Don Thousand has access to the Numeron code, which gives him godlike powers to reconstruct everything to his will. Best illustrated by owning the never before seen rank 13 monster that can reach a titanic 100,000 attack. To illustrate this, Thousand breaks the basic tenets of the game with his field spell Numeron Network, which, after sending Numeron Calling, allows him to summon the Numeron Gates, 4 Exceed monsters from his extra deck. These monsters cannot be destroyed and their attacks double after each battle. This allows Don Thousand to attack the opponent 4 times and either annihilating the opponent's field or defeating them outright. If the OTK fails, he can rank up number 1 into number Chaos 1, Numeron Gate Sunya, which can banish everything on the field and return next time by phase, doing a minimum of 3,000 damage to the opponent. Despite his insane damage potential, the lack of cards that Don Thousand has really hurt his consistency here. As previously stated, I reduced the necessary card limit for today's competitors so they were eligible. However, for Don Thousand in particular, I really had to stretch the rules. I gave him cards that share his name, as Vector played them when fused with him and they're assumedly his, and I gave him many repetitious cards that have effects like his actual cards, like Demise of the Land and Numeron Wall. In addition, I gave him cards that have similar effects to his anime-only cards, like Exceed Encore instead of Numeron Exceed Revision, and Curse Seal Forbidden Spell instead of Numeron Spell Revision. This leaves his deck very one-dimensional. Either he gets his OTK off and wins, or he does not and has to eat direct attacks until he draws Numeron Network. Don Thousand may not have a multitude of options like other competitors, but the one option he does have is enough to win games and even matches, and we'll see how the God of the Burying World does in this competition. Zark plays a Supreme King deck based around summoning Supreme King Zark. The destroyer of the original dimension, Zark's deck is focused around getting his 4 component pieces, a Fusion Dragon, a Synchro Dragon, a Pendulum Dragon, and an Exceed Dragon, into either the field or graveyard and using one of his sorcerer monsters to summon Zark, which destroys all monsters the opponent controls, cannot be targeted or destroyed by card effects, and can summon another Supreme King Dragon when it destroys monster by battle. Zark's deck is focused around Pendulum Summoning, which was bar none the most powerful mechanic in the game, and is still very powerful despite the nerfs it has received. This can allow Zark to summon a handful of large odd-eyes dragon monsters and attack the opponent, finishing them in one turn. He also has access to Starving Venom Fusion Dragon with the inclusion of Polymerization, which can take monster effects and attacks to deliver massive damage to the opponent. Despite this though, Zark is his own worst enemy, in more ways than one. This mostly falls in his deck's inability to summon Zark consistently. While I filled his deck with cards they most likely had, such as the Gazer Magicians along with Chronograph Sorcerers, Astrograph Parallel, getting the dragons in the graveyard is a long and arduous process that Zark simply cannot do in one turn. Along with this, Supreme King Gate Infinity's limitation of pendulum summoning when you control monsters means that you really have one shot to summon a large field, and if that fails, Zark is in trouble. While Zark may have a few weaknesses, once he gets started, the opponent will be facing down the wrath of the Supreme King. I plays an Attic Nister deck, which is focused around different summoning mechanics to defeat the opponent. I was the exception I was referring to earlier. While his role as a final boss may be controversial to some, I was the final thread of Reigns, and his deck is among the strongest here. I, unlike many of the other competitors here, focus on various combos to summon a multitude of fusion, synchro, exceed, link, and even ritual monsters, each with powerful effects to tear down the opponent's field and do massive damage to the opponent in conjunction with one another. As a last resort, I can summon the Arrival Attic Nister, which is unaffected by card effects and can reach upwards of 6,000 attack, along with a once per turn monster destruction effect and token creation. Another aspect of I that makes him unique is his recovery. I can rebuild boards very easily with a Chi-Chi Attic Nister and Doyon Attic Nister, which searches and recovers from the graveyard respectively. In short, I plays the least like the other competitors, with his deck having a strong strategy instead of just having a strong endgame. While I's deck is powerful, he can be countered. Firstly, I can brick, and even though he can somewhat build a useful field from this brick, it hurts his chances. Secondly, the base attack of his monsters are a paltry 2300, so monsters that have a higher attack can run over the majority of I's field before he can mount an offensive. I is the newest competitor on our list, and his deck is incredibly powerful. Our competitors will have to watch out for the Dark Ignis in this competition. This competition was one of the most polarizing we have done so far. Every final boss had a focus on immensely flashy and powerful boss monsters that are difficult to summon. We need to get a look at which competitor could get to their boss monsters the easiest and have a backup plan if that monster is defeated. With Yami Bakura's various lockdown strategies, Night Shroud's Dragons, Zone's Disruption, Dawn Thousand's easily accessible OTK, Zark's Pendulum monsters, and I's flexible summoning mechanics, only one final boss will be crowned as the strongest. So, the strongest final boss in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the Dark Ignis. Variety was the key to victory here. The issue with many of the final bosses was that their strategies were very one-dimensional. I just had an answer to every participant. Yami Bakura's continuous spells, Wind Pegasus. Zark's Army of Monsters, Light Dragon, etc. This run allowed I to get a perfect score of 10. I's strategy shows that practicality overwhelms power every single time. Second place is Zone. This actually shocked me, as I was sure he was going to get the first spot. His Time Lords are overwhelming and no other competitor could possibly defeat them, right? Well, I narrowly managed to edge out Zone. Even then, Zone took a game off I and has a very respectable 9 points. In my eyes, if we did this again, it could easily go in Zone's favor. In third place is Daddy Dawn Diddly Thousand, at only 1 point lower than the rank above him with 8 points. Dawn Thousand's game plan was very powerful and just summoning the gates was usually enough to annihilate the competition, taking games both I and Zone. The top 3 are easily in a league of their own, and if more duels were done, any of them could have been number 1. Starting at the second half of our rankings is, unfortunately, Zark. When the biggest issue of your deck is summoning yourself, you know you have issues. At 5 points, the deck could kind of coast on Pendulum Summoning going for an OTK, but that's really about it, and those above him made quick work of Zark. Surprisingly, not in last place is Yami Bakura. Yami Bakura managed to snag a total of 4 points. Managed to take games off Zone, Dawn Thousand, and straight up defeated Zark. Wouldn't that have been an interesting spectacle watching the anime? And bringing up the rear is Night Shroud. Really, this is just a case of circumstances. If Night Shroud's archetype ever gets released, we can do an addendum to this episode and look over how the Darkness archetype matches up, but as of now, his Red Eye strategy is inconsistent and very weak, only snagging 2 points, and only winning a match against Yami Bakura, who still scored more points than him in the long run. For the Source of Darkness, Night Shroud is the one who fell into despair this time around. Alright guys, that is my episode over power scaling Yu-Gi-Oh! With the final bosses. I know I had to mess with a few of the rules this time around, and I really don't like to do that, but if you guys enjoyed, leave a like, maybe subscribe. I appreciate the heck out of it. Also, if you guys would like to, follow me on Twitter, because I do regular Twitter polls over things around the channel, and I usually put polls up around power scaling Yu-Gi-Oh! To decide the next episode if you guys are interested in doing that. Along with this, I also opened up a Ko-fi account. This is a small Patreon-like website where you can tip your favorite creators and help them improve their work. Again, you're under no obligation to do this, but if you guys would like to get some rewards, such as choosing your own deck profile or even choosing a topic for the next Power Scaling Yu-Gi-Oh!, go to my Ko-fi link in the description and tip just $1 and you can get some of these rewards. Otherwise, I'm Jared Discord. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys have an excellent day. Bye!